they were the lamest. And I was so mad. I was so mad. I thought, how can you do this to me? I'm your friend. I came on the show to do you a favor, and you're giving me these losers here. I didn't even go on the date.
Tragically, just hours after her biggest career high, Cass Elliot was found dead in her hotel room, sparking rumors that haunted her legacy for years. Was it the ham sandwich, or something more sinister? While her fans celebrated her sold-out show in London, whispers of a darker chapter in her life began to surface. Cass had once crossed paths with Charles Manson, even welcoming him and his notorious followers into her world. The eerie connections between her and Manson have fueled quiet speculations, leaving some to wonder if there's more to the story than we've been told. Breaking out into music, Cass Elliot met with moderate success. She formed two bands between 1962 and 1964, the Big Three, and later the Mugwumps. In fact, it was while singing with the Mugwumps that she met Denny Doherty, the man that she would follow to the ends of the earth. In the first cruel twist of her romantic life, however, she suddenly became unavailable. Although Cass was in love with Doherty, she ended up getting married to another one of her bandmates. In 1963, Cass married her Mugwumps guitarist, James Hendricks. There wasn't any love between the two. The marriage was a simple arrangement to help Hendricks dodge the draft. Because her marriage was a sham, Cass knew that her only real tie to Hendricks was their band. So after 8 months, the Mugwumps split up, and Cass went out on her own, hoping that Doherty would follow her. Instead, however, he joined the New Journeymen, a band that consisted of the husband and wife duo John and Michelle Phillips. Cass was willing to do anything to get into the new band. Doherty had so far rebuffed Cass as a lover because of her weight, but he couldn't deny her talent, and he knew that she was the missing ingredient in the New Journeymen. But John Phillips didn't want to let Cass in the band. Apparently, he thought that her voice was too deep for his arrangements. In private, however, he was singing a different tune. Publicly, Phillips stated that Cass's voice wasn't right for the New Journeymen. Behind closed doors, he was extremely critical of her appearance. Phillips believed that Cass was simply too heavy to join the group. Her already shaky confidence could barely handle the truth. Throughout her life and career, Cass faced society's unfair beauty standards. In a time that celebrated wafer-thin women like Audrey Hepburn, Cass felt that she didn't stand a chance. Despite John Phillips's repeated refusals, Cass was desperate to join the New Journeymen to get closer to Doherty. According to Michelle Phillips, Cass even followed the band around everywhere they went. What they put her through was downright cruel. As she tagged along, the New Journeymen treated Cass even worse than they would have treated an annoying groupie. They ordered her around, forced her to serve them drinks, and even teased her by allowing her to rehearse with them, but not perform. However, fortunately for Cass, the tables were about to turn dramatically in her favor. The New Journeymen had a habit of putting good times ahead of their music, spending more money on substances than anything else. Eventually, they ran out of money and had to turn to the only person they knew who could take them in, Cass. Desperate for a roof over their heads, they turned up to Cass's Los Angeles home, and she made them an offer they couldn't refuse. When the New Journeymen showed up on Cass's doorstep, she saw an opportunity to finally get what she wanted. Reportedly, Cass took advantage of the group's dire situation. Whether he liked her size or not, John Phillips had to agree to let Cass into the band or sleep on the streets. But there's another version of the story of how Cass came to be in the band.
And she came home 2 days later, and she could sing 2 tones higher. And just sort of loosened something up in there. I'm not sure how it happened. I don't suggest it as a thing to do for people who want to raise the tone of their voices.
For years, the official story was that it was fate and not poor money management that brought Cass and the New Journeymen together. According to this version of events, Cass had accompanied the New Journeymen on a trip to St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. While there, she was walking under a construction site when a pipe fell on her head. Cass was knocked off her feet, and the supposed head injury, how unbelievable it sounds, caused her to sing in the higher register that John Phillips had been looking for. The crazy pipe to the head story was likely just Cass's way of covering up the embarrassing truth. Decades later, sources close to the band revealed that Phillips didn't want it leaking out to their fans that he had essentially fat-shamed Cass out of joining. Whatever the truth, Cass was finally in the band. After some late-night inspiration, they renamed themselves the Mamas and the Papas. Then the good times started to roll. With Cass's vocals, the band recorded huge hits like California Dreamin' and Monday Monday. But even though she was in the band, the teasing about her weight didn't stop. In fact, it got worse. John and Michelle Phillips, along with Doherty, openly mocked Cass's weight in the lyrics of their songs. For example, in the band's hit song Creaky Alley, they wrote the lyrics, "No one's getting fat except Mama Cass." The insulting lyrics struck a chord with their fans, and much to Cass's dismay, the nickname Mama Cass stuck. Then one of her bandmates crossed a line. Cass had really only joined the Mamas and the Papas because of her unrequited love for Doherty. Sadly, while Cass had been pining over him, he'd been lusting over someone else. In fact, the object of her affection had started an affair with the object of her jealousy, Michelle Phillips. When Doherty told her that he was having an affair with Phillips, Cass was left utterly heartbroken and full of envious rage. The betrayal left her crestfallen. She lamented to Phillips, "You can have any man in the world. Why take the man I love?" Even after Doherty had told Cass about the affair, she still held hope that one day he might grow to love her. Decades later, Doherty revealed that Cass had proposed to him one night, but that he hadn't answered because he'd been too intoxicated. She buried her woes with the Mamas and the Papas into her music and a dangerous amount and array of substances, which led to some wild behavior. In 1967, Cass traveled to London ahead of her bandmates for a scheduled performance. But before long, she found herself on the wrong side of the law. The local London authorities detained Cass for having pilfered bed linens from the apartment she was staying in. There were rumors, however, that they really wanted her for something far more serious. One of Cass's many alleged lovers was a man named Pick Dawson. But she wasn't the only one interested in Dawson. So were the local authorities. In addition to possibly being Cass's lover, he was also her supplier. The authorities in London wanted to use the accusations against Cass to get to Dawson. She spent a whole night behind bars in London, possibly facing serious charges. However, after she appeared before the magistrate, the authorities dropped the charges against her for lack of evidence. Nevertheless, the bad press forced the band to cancel their scheduled performance. Her days with the Mamas and the Papas were coming to an abrupt end. With nothing but a broken heart and insulting lyrics to show for her time with the band, Cass thought about moving on. With the success of her solo recording of Dream a Little Dream of Me, Cass left the Mamas and the Papas and struck out on her own. Shortly after the band's breakup, she landed a major gig at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. It was a 3-week, 6-figure deal that would have made Cass the breakout star from her broken-up band. Now a solo act, Cass felt the pressure to slim down more intensely than ever before. To prepare her for her big Las Vegas debut, she adopted a crazy crash diet. She fasted for 4 days a week for 7 months and lost 1/3 of her 300 pounds. Unfortunately for her, the consequences were painful. The diet slimmed her down significantly, but it came at a terrible price: her health. In the weeks leading up to her first Las Vegas show, Cass developed acute tonsillitis, hemorrhaging vocal cords, mononucleosis, and a dangerous case of hepatitis, all thanks to her dangerous new eating habits. She was ill-prepared for what came next. Massive stars like Sammy Davis Jr., Jimi Hendrix, and Mia Farrow turned up in Las Vegas to watch Cass's big debut. But thanks to her health conditions prior to the show, she had barely even rehearsed a single lyric. When Cass finally took to the stage for her first performance, she left the audience stunned. The star-studded crowd eagerly awaited her debut as a solo artist. Nervously, Cass took to the stage, then fumbled her way through the performance. She was so weak from her illnesses that her voice was barely audible. Cass's contract stipulated that she would perform 2 shows a night. After a quick rest, she tried to salvage the show with her second performance. But her voice only got worse, and the crowd only got less sympathetic. The disappointed audience noisily walked out, and Caesar's Palace had no choice but to cancel Cass's contract. Then they added insult to injury. When the sun rose on her awful performances, the media was unforgiving. Newsweek compared Cass's Vegas debut to the sinking of the Titanic. She fell into a deep depression, but thankfully, she had one bright spot in her life. Just before she signed her Las Vegas contract, Cass had given birth to a healthy baby girl, Owen. Despite the troubles in her love life and career, Cass was obsessed with being a good mother. She guarded her daughter fiercely, even firing nannies who grew too close. To protect her reputation and her child's privacy, she kept the news out of the headlines. More importantly, when the media found out about her child, Cass staunchly refused to identify the father. That didn't stop the media from speculating wildly, however. There were even darker rumors that followed Cass throughout her career. Cass hosted legendary Hollywood parties with all the biggest stars, not to mention some terrible ones as well. Legend has it that Cass had hosted, on at least one occasion, the notorious and noxious cult leader Charles Manson and his associates at her house. It's not clear how close she was to Manson, but she was close enough to make some people look at her differently after Manson's horrific and brutal massacre. John Phillips pointed the finger at Cass. He blamed her for having invited Manson and his followers into their group. He even blamed Cass for the grisly slaughter that ended Sharon Tate's life. Thankfully, the authorities didn't agree with Phillips' assessment. With her Las Vegas flop, Cass's solo career stalled, but she spent the next years making regular television appearances. She even had her own television variety specials, the Mama Cass television program, and Don't Call Me Mama Anymore. In her heart, however, Cass longed for more than just a middling career. She wanted the one thing that had always eluded her: love. When she least expected it, she found it. In 1971, Cass finally found someone to call her own. She met Donald von Wiedenmann, a journalist and heir to a Bavarian barony, through some friends in Hollywood, but their union didn't last long. After just 2 months, the marriage was over as quickly as it had begun. The reasons for their split seemed to stem from lifestyle differences and personal incompatibilities. Cass was adjusting to life after the group, focusing on her solo career, while von Wiedenmann had a different set of priorities. These differences likely contributed to the quick unraveling of their marriage. Cass Elliot continued her dangerous dieting habits, but by 1974, it caught up with her. While waiting backstage at the Johnny Carson show, she unexpectedly collapsed. Medical staff rushed her to the hospital, but she waved the incident away as mere exhaustion. "My blood sugar level dropped or something, and I just sort of tipped over, but everything was okay," she said. But clearly, everything was not fine. She ignored the warning signs of her waning health. After her collapse at the Johnny Carson show, she wrapped up 2 weeks of concerts at the London Palladium. Then, without taking so much as a cat nap, she kicked off her post-show celebrations with Mick Jagger's 31st birthday party at his place in Chelsea. Cass left Mick Jagger's party and went to a brunch hosted by Georgia Brown in her honor. However, much to everyone's dismay, Cass appeared unwell, blowing her nose frequently, coughing, and having trouble breathing. Nevertheless, later that evening, she went to another party hosted by the American entertainment journalist Jack Martin. Her appearance there, however, left everyone confused. Wherever she went, Cass was always the life of the party. At Martin's event, however, life appeared to have left her. Even though everyone commented that she seemed to be in good spirits, her sickly appearance had everyone concerned. Cass again chalked it up to exhaustion and decided to head home for the night. It would be her final public appearance. Cass returned home to an apartment owned by Harry Nilsson in the affluent Mayfair neighborhood. However, when Cass failed to emerge from her room the next day, her secretary became suspicious. When he finally opened her bedroom door, he was left devastated. He found her lifeless in her bed. She died of an apparent heart attack, but predictably, the rumor mill concocted its own version of events. Before long, everyone was viciously reporting that Cass had choked while eating a ham sandwich, an obvious smear against her long-standing struggle with obesity.